right, we'll go ahead and get started. I think we'll see if people roll in here. So, just out of curiosity, how many actually played the CTF yesterday or tried to play? Couple hands. So it didn't quite go like we expected. I know there's a ton of different CTFs that people were kind of bouncing back and forth between. The plan was we were going to have the top 16 people compete in the head-to-head competition today, but we only had 12 people that partially played, and of those people, only 5 completed the challenges that they needed to play for the competition. So instead what I did is I asked everybody that competed in the top 5 to do demos if they were around today. So every hour we'll be doing a demo of one of the challenges from yesterday. So if you haven't solved it but want to know how it's solved, you can come in and actually walk people do a full walkthrough and on their approach. And then we're going to leave the challenges up all day as well, so that as you watch them do it, you can come back through and then try to walk through it yourself. That way you can get hands-on practice trying to hack the thing that they just showed you how to hack. So it's a little bit different plan than before, but hopefully it'll still be fun. We also have the open mic event that's going to be running on the half hour. So far we haven't had anybody sign up, so if you've got an idea of something you want to share, whether it just be some fun project that you've been working on or some random hack or stand-up routine, whatever, feel free to throw your name in the bag on the table out back. We've got a bag that says open mic on it. We've got a spot to write your name. So throw that in there, and if you want to do your Twitter handle or something like that, we'll DM you before the slot, but just kind of check back on the half hour. We'll draw from that and then let people talk. If we've got anybody, if not, we'll just keep the room kind of as a hangout area for the rest of the day. So with that, this will be fairly quick, but I'm going to run through the first challenge, which I'm kind of mad at myself for creating actually after the fact. Did anybody here complete? So the most solved challenge was not another base 64 challenge. Did anybody here solve that one? Nice. All right. How did you guys solve it? What's that? Base 58. Yeah. What tool did you use? Just out of curiosity. Yes. All right. I love CypherChef. How many people have actually used CypherChef before? Like half the room, maybe a third of the room. Cool. All right. So I don't want to. I'll run through what CypherChef is and explain how this challenge works. So the key here, and this is why it was kind of mean, is not another base 64 challenge, is right in the title. The hope there was that this was a hint that it's not actually base 64. And of course, this was probably a little bit misleading. No CTF would be complete without a base 64 challenge. But essentially what you get is a string of characters. So the reason that we have things like base 64 encoding is a lot of times you need to send binary data over a mechanism that doesn't support raw hex codes. And so what you can use is an encoding form like base 64, which takes all of that data and then essentially turns it into a series of ASCII characters. But there's more than just base 64 encoding. There's actually a whole lot of different encodings that you'll find in various systems. Since this is one area, I know this is a security conference, so everybody probably knows that. But this is not encryption. Like you hear occasionally people talk about like base 64 encryption. This is in no way, shape, or form protected. There's no key involved in it. It's just an encoding scheme. There is some maybe some obscurity in the way that it's encoded, but it's certainly not something that will protect it. Is that big enough for everybody to see? I know. Cool. So this is a tool called CypherChef. It's put out by the GCHQ. It's online and it's freely available. You can also download it if you want to do it offline. So if you're doing various CTFs, this is a really good option to just download it and then open it up from the file directly. It's all done in JavaScript locally in the system. So if you watch the network tab, it's not actually sending a bunch of your private data out to the GCHQ. It's all just being handled directly in your browser. So that's nice. But essentially the way that it works is you have a series of operations that you can run on the left side here. You have an input area where you can put in the thing that you want to work on, and then it'll show you the output. So for example, with the CTF, let me make sure I've got the right copy here. So I'll copy the text from the challenge, and I'll paste it into CypherChef. Maybe. There we go. I'm a left-handy, and I'm using the left hand to hold the mic, so we'll see how this goes. So now you can see on that the input is exactly the same as the output. That's because there's nothing actually in the recipe side. So now what we can do is start looking for different ways to convert that text. So if you look at the different categories, you can see that there's a whole different group of things that you can do. So for example, if we wanted to take this, I'm going to actually just show some test code as an example. We can take that and then turn that into a hex dump. So if you're familiar with the hex codes, now we can see that test 1, 2, 3 in hex is 74, 65, 73. So that's useful if you have a bunch of raw data. You can also drag and drop a file directly into the input form as well. So a lot of people don't know that. But if you've got like a zip file or some type of binary file, you can just drop it in here and then get the hex output. So sometimes this is a lot faster than trying to like use hex dumps on a console. If you see that there is a pause and then a kind of a no symbol. If you turn the no symbol on, it'll gray out the box and then deactivate that. So if you're working on your recipe, you can see that it'll allow you to disable part of it. So we can do, there's 2 hex dumps. This is another one that's really, really useful, especially for like exploit development, is to hex. So if you've got some bytecode or something like that you want to convert into a hex string for some overflow or payload, you can do that. And you've got all sorts of different options as to how you can actually format that string directly. We can even say like we're just going to do 8 bytes per line. And it should update it. There we go. So that's really, really useful. If you want to remove something from the recipe, you can just drag and drop it off. So I'm just going to show briefly some of the different things you can do, and then we'll solve the challenge. So there are all the different encodings. You can see that you can move in and out of binary, octal, so base 8. You can see that there's a lot more than just base 64. So 32, 45, 58, 62. So there are all of HTML. So a lot of times when you're sending traffic over the web, you have to encode the URL. So if you have an encoded URL or you need to encode a URL, say you're trying to do some type of cross-site scripting attack or whatever else, or not cross-site scripting, that could work, SQL injection, this URL encode can be really helpful to get your payload set up. So you've got data format. There's actually encryption. So if you have AES, you can give it a key. Let's give it a UTF-8 string, and you can see that it'll actually, so I think, I'm not sure how big that string needs to be. You might have to work on getting the right values so you have a good IV and a good key. But it can actually encrypt values and decrypt them as well using all sorts of different, everything from AES to triple DES to Blowfish, RC4, as well as a lot of CTFE type of encodings. You get things like exclusive or the Visioneer. Morse code pops up in a lot of CTFs. So like this is the Morse code for CTF. So if you're ever in a CTF and you get something like this as a challenge, you can just go straight from Morse code and get the results back. So really, really handy in terms of the different things that you can encode. A couple of the other ones that are really, really useful, so like things like networking, you can actually send certain requests and have it pull the output directly into CypherChef. So if you've got something that's really repetitive, some endpoint that you want to hit over and over, you can use something like that. It's got the ability to pull IP addresses out of a giant list of things, so that's really helpful. Again, datetime converters, some of the extractors are great if you've got like JSON or some other format that you want to pull data out of in a consistent way. So instead of having to like find the right string, copy and paste it, you can just use an extractor to get that out. They also have regex, so if you're familiar with regex, you can find exactly what you want to pull it out. So that's kind of an overview of CypherChef. I'm going to go back to actually solving the challenge here, which is what everybody's here to see. So there's a couple ways you can go about this in CypherChef. So first, what we can do is start playing with some of the different encodings. And so if I go back to our encryption encoding and go to, actually, so the search is really great here, because when you're converting out of an encoding, it starts with the keyword from. So we can say from, and we can just start dragging and dropping all of these over here. Under the assumption that it's one of these probably. And then what I can do is I can just start deactivating all of them and activating them one at a time. So we can see that it's not that, it's not 45, 58. Oh, that looks like something right there. So we can see some text. We can see the flag text. Let's remember that it's base 58 there, but let's keep moving on to see if there's anything else that comes out. We can do 85 as well, just to show that we've gone through all the major encodings. So the only one that had anything that looked anything like text was base 58. So I'm going to clear out the rest. You can also just do them one at a time, whatever workflow you want. Oops. All right, so now we have our base 58. But it looks weird here, right? Anybody know what's going on with this particular encoding? So you guys solved the problem. You got someone in the back. Yep. Yes. So who knows what UTF-16 is? Just out of curiosity. We got a couple hands now. So when computers are trying to take text and manage the storage of text, at the end of the day, you hear it's all just ones and zeros. So if we go to the representation of this, we'll just do actually let's do hex dump, and I'll show you because we've got the tools right here. So if we look at it in a hex dump, and I'm gonna have to make it a little bit smaller so that it's not too hard to see, you can see that there is 2 different characters that represent each single ASCII character. So when you hear about ASCII, it's 1 byte. One of these numbers from 0 to 255, or if you're in hex from 0 to FF, represents a symbol. But there are a lot of other different languages that use more than just the symbols that we're used to using. And so they've come up with different encoding schemes that allow you to have a lot of the acrylic characters and others. The beauty of the solution that they ended up choosing is that UTF-16 uses the ASCII character for the first character in the byte array, and then the second one is a modifier. So you can then have, so 46001 would be an entirely different character, but 4600, the ASCII character of 46 is for F. So when you decode it, you can see the ASCII translation, it's just a little bit messed up. So that's one way to get it, but there is a tool within CypherChef called, so it's, let me decode, I'm gonna put my mic down for a sec. And so you can see that there are all sorts of different encodings. So again, essentially what this is just different ways that a computer can store text as ones and zeros. And there are a ton of them. And so in this case, the one that we used for this challenge was UTF-16 little endian, which if you're on a Windows system, this is what it uses to encode text by default. So if you're running in PowerShell and you're trying to decode something as base64 or encode it as base64, it'll actually come out as UTF-16. The LE stands for little endian, so you can choose to put the least significant bit first or last when you're storing something, so you can have it forward or backwards depending on whatever convention you want to use, and so that specifies it. So there we have the final flag for that challenge. So I'd encourage you all to go into CypherChef and actually try to repeat that yourselves. I'm going to show you one other way that you can solve it, which is super helpful for certain challenges. So CypherChef has a thing called magic, and it is a little bit like magic. If you throw this in here, it's going to go through all sorts of different possible permutations. And you can go through a certain depth as well, which means it's going to try a recipe of at least like up to 3 common encodings in sequence, and then try and find out what the results are. Now here, normally it's going to auto bake. Recipe is really memory intensive, so it makes sure that you're wanting to like be ready to go. So you actually have to click the bake, which will start that off. And so it found, actually it did give me the first right. So it said that it has some matching operations. Here it says the most likely is base 58, could be base 64, and potentially valid UTF. So I just dropped that there right away. And if you know some of the values that might be there, so flag is a good one. You don't know if the F is uppercase or lowercase in a lot of the challenges, so I'll just usually do like LAG. And why is it not finding it now? This totally worked right before I did the demo. Let me make sure I copied and pasted it right again. There we go. It needed intensive mode. So intensive mode will actually dump out all of the results that it thinks based off of the likelihood of it being the right one. And here right away you can see that this recipe is going to give you these values if you start with base 58, and then it's going to try a whole bunch of different encoding. So you can see you get pretty close right there. And then when we get to this one right here, it actually shows you the right flag with the right encoding. And so we can click on that, it'll load it, and then you get the answer right there. So if you don't have any idea of what encoding it might be used, this magic feature within CypherChef is super useful. So with that, hopefully that's a good introduction to a tool that you can use for all sorts of stuff in security or otherwise. Any questions on CypherChef or on that first challenge before we finish up here? No questions? Oh, nope. Just somebody scratching their chin. All right. So we will, I guess, check back around here at maybe the 30-minute mark, and we'll see if anybody's submitted a talk for the open mic. If not, there's a lot of other really great talks going on in some of the other tracks. So feel free to keep an eye on those. We'll be back for a demo of the, let's see, I forget which one is next, but we've got the demo for, hold on. I tweeted it out under our Hungry Hungry Hackers Twitter account, although it's a new account, and they're much better at banning bots now. So I don't think anybody's actually seen these unless Mike retweets them. But we've got the Door Company Challenge coming up next, which is a web attack. Show back up at 1 if you want to see how we walk through that one. So otherwise, thank you all for coming and hanging out for a while. See you all around.